Like they do like psyops, you know what I mean? And they're in here right now probably too. But they just like, it's like a cult. It's like a sex cult where they do psyops at the behest of their favorite content creator. Anyway, I remember when you said I should vote for Vermin Supreme. No, I said vote for Trump. Get it right, guys. I said I love Trump. I'm a fan of Trump. Please vote for Donald Trump. Remember when I said those things? Yeah. That's right. It's real. Speaking of things that are not real, I saw something that I found very interesting. Remember the guy who like Sex Pestany was like debating, duking out in the marketplace of ideas? He's some lawyer guy named Pisco or something. Remember when I was talking about that? Apparently his community actually did something that's quite interesting. Instead of behaving like Destiny orbiters normally do, which is just like lie about my positions and then design an entire narrative off of this falsehood that they've created around a position that I do not hold, they actually went back to the original. Okay, they actually went back to the original fucking content and assessed it without Destiny filtering it. Yeah, no, it's specifically about me and my advocacy for re-education camps, which is not even a thing that I have said. It's not even a thing that I've advocated for, but I found it quite interesting because I don't really look at the other side. I don't really broach into the dark side of the internet frequently. It was interesting seeing people basically go back and be like, hey, I don't really like Hasan. I'm a liberal. But I've realized that a lot of these other like liberal content creators have just been straight up lying about Hasan's positions, which is like, yeah, that's exactly what's been going on in perpetuity, pretty much for every single thing. One of the ways in which people do that is when they take something that I've said that is a joke and act as though I'm saying it sincerely. That's obviously a classic version of this. But what's crazy about it, oh my God, they deleted it? You shouldn't trust DGG with how to interpret Hasan's ideology. Re-education camps is an example. Wait, what the why did he delete it? This was like a long effort post that I was going to go through. Deleted because too much context. Context is not allowed. The account got deleted? Wait, what the how is this? What? This was there this morning. Bro, this has 39 upvotes, dude. It doesn't make any sense why anyone would get so mad at it that they would brigade it to that degree where they would just like make the account, delete the post, and then delete the fucking account itself. Like, what are these guys doing? If you actually look at the post itself, like you will understand why it's so crazy that they deleted it. You shouldn't trust DGG, Destiny's community, with how to interpret Hasan's ideology. Re-education camps is an example. Part 1, re-education and Hasan's ideological beliefs. On yesterday's stream, someone named Zip Zip called in and claimed that Hasan wants re-education camps and referred to his conversation with Ethan Klein about them. Hasan does not believe in having re-education camps, and this interpretation that he does is clearly bad faith when you listen to Hasan's fleshed out thoughts. Here are the clips. But I guess you can't even fucking see the clips now because because everything is gone. Ethan, if the will of the people is to go back to do a social democracy, is that something that a socialist country should move towards, or should there be resistance in the government to keep socialism? I think the resistance should be akin to how capitalist governments have resisted historically to any kind of socialist movement. Not to that same degree of violence, but yes, the solution to that would always be education and offering more re-education? Re-education, certainly. Yeah, I know that's a trigger word. Let's put them in camps? No, not like that. I know it's a trigger word because everyone goes, oh, re-education, what do you mean? Well, China does that. Are you talking about resident schools? Are you talking about Xinjiang? China has re-education camps. Yeah, 100%. They do it. They did it in Xinjiang, which is pretty good, right? No, I don't agree with that. Yeah, I don't think it was good. And this is something I've openly criticized as well. That's not good. The massive surveillance apparatus they built in Xinjiang is not good. So what would be a good socialist re-education camp for a capitalist? I don't think it would be camps. It depends on the crime, right? Like, are people committing crimes at the behest of this? Because if there's a socialist state and someone is doing like white terror, let's say, or someone is doing South Korean style purges of communists, which has happened historically in every country that America is aligned with because they are anti-communist, where they launch military dictatorships, whether we like it or not, those things happen. So in a situation like that, I think if there's any terrorism happening, yes, if there's violence, that is obvious, says Ethan. I say, then yes, I do think there should be an enforcement mechanism. And in that enforcement mechanism, I think rehabilitation, which would include re-education as well, which would probably be a lot better than like a prison structure where they have slavery, like in the United States of America. He explicitly rejects the idea, this is the input from the person. He explicitly rejects the idea, what is this? Former Orbiter alert. He covered the video and it has videos. Pisco stumps Destiny, leaves him coping in heated Twitter exchange. He explicitly rejects the idea of the re-education camps. In the way Hasan explains it, he talks about the education of socialism to be the same and how a capitalist country would teach or indoctrinate for capitalism. In the way he talks about re-education, he's talking about a rehabilitative process for people who commit violent crimes or ideologically motivated terrorism. For Hasan's alternative in practice, it already exists. There are several liberal democracies that run compulsory and voluntary de-radicalization programs for violent extremist offenders. Exactly. Which is ironic because, like, I have in the past jokingly said, like, we need re-education camps for these people when describing this process of, like, violent right-wing extremists that are committing acts of terror, right? Like, crazy anti-vaxxers and shit like that. Zip Zip is one of the most deranged DGG foot soldiers. He even attended his court hearing, and I shit you not, made footnotes to share with the Epstein for the stream, completely presenting the victim as a liar. They are not normal and definitely take a parasocial to a whole new level. There are a lot of people like this. There are a lot of people like this in this community. It's like parasocial. It's like maxed out parasocialism with incredibly weird, just an incredibly, like, they do like psyops, you know what I mean? And they're in here right now probably too. But they just like, it's like a cult. It's like a sex cult where they do psyops at the behest of their favorite content creator. And even if it doesn't work, even if it doesn't actually end up, working, it still doesn't matter. They still do it all the time. It's very, very weird. What is a crazy anti-vaxxer? A forced re-education for parents who had vaccine-injured child? Come on, use a... What? Come on, use a better example. Vaccine injuries are real. I think they use an example here to say, here's my support. Part 2, Destiny, thought crimes and Hasan derangement syndrome. I had actually looked into this a few days ago because I heard Not So Erudite talking about Hasan, and she repeated the same bad faith interpretation as well. So basically what happens is I say something, Destiny cuts it in half, chops it up, immediately fucking frames it in the most negative way possible, and extends it to the most like extreme hypothetical that I'm not advocating for, even if I'm directly knowing full well that someone is going to do a bad faith interpretation, even if I actually, ahead of the dishonest interpretation, literally spell out exactly what I want, right? Literally spell out exactly what I want and exactly what I think is the appropriate thing to do in this scenario. It doesn't even matter because he has a network of other content creators, including like these apolitical orbiters that also take that out of context snippet and just go along with that narrative and pump it to anyone that will listen. And then that's how you arrive at like all of these crazy conclusions that people have about my, Asman, does anyone exactly the same thing with you? Yeah, there's a bunch of like relatively large content creators who also participate in this, which is, you know, understandable why so many people have enmity towards someone like myself, because they just don't know what my worldview is. They've only seen my worldview through the most negative lens that they could possibly see. And they use Reddit for this propaganda. They use Reddit for this like this purpose, because Reddit is like so easily brigaded. And this effort post was yeeted. Like, look at this. This effort post with 39 upvotes was destroyed. The account that posted it was deleted, and the post itself was deleted by the person who made this post. Let's take a look.
The will of the people is to go back to do more of a social democracy. Is that something that a socialist country should move towards, or should there be resistance in the government to keep socialism?
I think the resistance should be akin to how capitalist governments have resisted historically any kind of socialist movement, not to that same degree of violence, but I think that, yes, the solution to that would always be education and...
Re-education camps?
So, dude, literally, he is immediately, the narrative is just like knee-jerk, pure knee-jerk, and now he's going to justify it for the rest of the clip. So the question was just, how would a socialist state enforce socialism? Yeah, how would it perpetuate socialism? How do you know it wouldn't just turn one generation ago capitalist and it all comes crumbling down? How would that be perpetuated? And someone's like, well, similar to capitalism, education. Re-education? Why don't you give it a moment? Why don't you hear what he's saying first?
Re-education?
Or spaz?
Re-education, certainly, yeah.
What a total spaz.
Somebody give me the clip of that one loser who's like, we would house our comrades in re-education camps. Somebody please give me the clip. Please give me the clip.
I know that's like a
Let's put
trigger
them in
word.
camps.
No, not like that.
Like not only did he falsely present the argument that I was making, okay, by cutting the context in half, but then he just like follows up, I guess, by adding a total ridiculous thing that I'm not advocating for, by presenting an alternative, like a totally separate person, and be like, this is what he believes. No, I started off by talking about the importance of rehabilitation. Why not ignore these morons? The reason why I wanted to cover this specifically is because I noticed that this is happening within Destiny's own orbit. And that's the only reason why I'm covering it. Because like these guys, including this guy who's covering it, including like this community that's covering this, are a lot of people that are in this other, like on the apolitical / liberal side of the internet. And this is the first time that I've seen people on that side be like, wait a minute, these motherfuckers have been lying to us all along about Hasan's positions. Like, it's not a who cares situation. I think it's important to understand this, and it's important to address this, especially because I have ignored it for years and years, and they haven't really gone away. They've literally designed an entire industry, an entire cottage industry about around just literally pumping out content that revolves around doing exactly what this microcosm is here, where I say something, people immediately interpret it in the most bad faith way possible, and then they just like pump out content surrounding this like bad faith misunderstanding. And but the reason why I have always ignored it is because like there's not really much you can do about it. People are just always gonna lie. And my expectation hopefully is people will go, wait a minute, is this true? And then come in here on their own and try to understand with a little bit of charitability, right? And it does happen. There are plenty of people in this community that probably originally started off with a false interpretation of what I believe, what I represent, and what my advocacy looks like, and then came in and watched my commentary personally and were like, okay, this was completely wrong, right? But there are plenty of people who don't take that leap, and there is a steady flow of circulating content out there that they don't ever have to take that leap, because even when I'm not streaming, they're like scouring the internet to find older clips of me to like recirculate, to be like, see, he's bad. Just remind yourself that he's bad. And it constantly feeds into that. It constantly feeds into this like, Hasan. Hasan is bad because he's like a scary Marxist-Leninist who's going to kill you all, right? This is the first time I've seen one of these communities, like one of these like Orbiter, like Destiny Orbiter communities actually really look at the subject matter and be like, this was crazy. Like, this is not correct. They're just like lying about Hasan's positions and then making content off of those positions. And then that narrative becomes, for that side of the internet, that narrative is my positions. Like, no one is actually jumping. No one is actually leaping past that point and being like, what is this guy's actual opinion? They only see me from an incredibly negative lens.
I know there's a
Oh, not the camps. Oh, no.
trigger word because everyone goes, oh, re-education. What do you mean? Like, immediately people think like, are you talking about like resident schools? Are you talking about the Xinjiang? Yeah, 100%. They do. They do it. They did it in Xinjiang, which I think
good,
was,
right?
No, I don't agree with that. Yeah, I don't think it was good. This is something I have openly criticized as well. Like, that's not good. The massive surveillance apparatus they built in Xinjiang is not good.
So what would be good about a socialist re-education camp for capitalists?
It wouldn't necessarily, I don't think it'd be camps. I mean, it depends.
Well, it wouldn't be oh my God.
Like, we already have a pre-existing system of rehabilitation that exists under liberal capitalist democracy. I think we should continue doing that. And also, this is complete fucking alternative reality hypothesis here. We do not live in a socialist country. We do not live in a socialist utopia. We do not live in a global socialist organization of the economy.
I don't hate him. I don't hate Hasan.
What's wrong? You haven't even heard his answer yet. You haven't even heard what he said. Literally talking about rehabilitation for people who have committed crimes, like violent crimes and terrorism, ideological terrorism. What's the problem? That's what Hasan's position is here. We've just gone over that. No one's got any good pushback. Liberal Latino spazzed out at first, but then can't justify anything. So we've got no good pushback. It seems like Hasan is just asking for rehabilitation that includes like education about how to fit into that society with the ideology that is in the government. In much the same way that we try and de-radicalize people from Islamic extremism in many Western countries because that ideology does not fit with the ideology of the government. Why does he believe socialism will win with education, though? Seems very cultish. Well, everyone believes well, hopefully everyone believes their ideology would win with education, right? I believe my ideology would win with education, right? You just assume that most people are rational actors, and if they have access to all the information, then they'll come to the right decision, and you believe that your decision is the right decision. And as such, if everyone had perfect information and you're all going, we would all come to the same decision, right? Hopefully everyone thinks that. Unless your ideology relies on you tricking people. Whoops.
All of the mind-numbingly retarded fucking fans that can watch him squirm like this and not think that it's the most. You literally have.
And you see it like the way he's designing this conversation, which is not even like that contentious. It's just, this is back when Ethan and I were obviously cordial with one another. And this is supposed to be like a normal conversation. He's asking questions. There's a little bit of bad faith, but that happens in all back and forth debates. It's fine. But this is like the initial jump off point. And he just says like, I'm squirming. So then his parasocial fans also consider this to be squirming. And then they just like repeat it over and over again. And then ultimately the only thing that people remember from that, if they don't actually watch the original source material personally, and they only watch it from this like negative lens, that's the only thing they remember.
I said most people are rational.
Important caveat, they're not new fans. They're just tired of the obsession from D's community. These people have brain rotted themselves in the gibberish. The two orbiters think you simp for terrorists. Yeah, these guys are not fans of mine. I think they, especially when it comes to foreign policy, I suspect they still have firmly held commitments to like American imperialism and probably think I'm like a dangerous person on that in that regard. I think that it kind of feels like this is the first time I've encountered this person, but it makes me feel like these guys are basically realizing after years and years of this like negative framing, this incredibly negative framing, that maybe the negative framing wasn't correct. And I think part of that is because Destiny took such a strong stance that was pro-Israel doing a genocide, and that the environment shifted in my direction as I knew it inevitably would when people realized the totality of this violence that Israel is pushing in Gaza. And we're here now. So I think a lot of people are basically reconsidering their stances because they were so heavily invested in whatever Sex Pestiny was saying and just kind of regurgitating that this is a moment where it's like, well, maybe regurgitating Sex Pesty's stances are not the most appropriate way to go about this. Maybe we should reconsider. Anyway, I gotta grab this.
Most people are rational. On average, on balance, most people are rational. If you have enough people voting with access to all the information, the rational decision will win out. Okay. My ideology is that mass education is fundamentally impossible. We're doomed to a cycle of constant changing systems. Okay.
Than asking the most innocuous questions, and Hasan is acting like he's
absolutely
in front of like a fucking Senate Judiciary Committee, and he's like under oath, and he's like committed like 50 million crimes. He's trying to hide from the United States. Like, it's actually appalling.
Depends on it depends on crimes, right? Like, are people committing crimes at the behest of this? Because if there's a socialist state and someone is doing like white terror, let's say, or someone is doing South Korean style purges of communists, which has happened historically in every country that America.
Sorry, hold on.
It's my
we just skipped so much shit. Just stupid. My synergy froze. Oh, this is the
But rather than
this is the clip. Hold on. This is what they want to do.
Abandoning the diagnosed or untreated mental illness will be substantially lower. It's a sad fact that some violent or predatory individuals may never be capable of
Yeah, so he then moves on to like someone else's position instead of addressing mine after he's already like thoroughly dismissed it and poisoned the well about a position that I'm not advocating for. But by the time I actually describe myself, he can also say, oh, well, he's now hiding this position that I ascribe to him. So I say something and then I add additional qualifiers to it. But before the additional qualifiers come in, he already has like jammed that position. Okay. He's already jammed that position to me where he's like, Hasan wants death camps. Hasan wants re-education camps where people are being tortured for thought crimes, right? I literally am in the process of explaining that that's not what I'm advocating for at all. And it's actually something that we already have in liberal democracy. But by the time he lets the video play and his audience hears my full perspective, he's already decided that my position is actually that I want re-education camps where people are getting killed for thought crimes, and that I'm actually hiding my truth. I'm squirming. I'm hiding what my true perspective is. And then he moves on to something totally ridiculous, like totally separate. Like he does the thing, he slams that position, and then he goes, see, this is what he wants by bringing up a totally separate YouTuber who I assume he's doing the similar thing to as well.
Back into society. But rather than abandoning these people, we must do our best to give them the best possible chance at recovery and reform with the hopes of eventually re-entering society. In situations where re-entry does seem possible, care must be taken to monitor and assist these reformed individuals to preempt relapse or deception and to ensure that the patient successfully merges back into wider society. Reactionaries and counter-revolutionaries would be treated in a very similar manner. How we deal with former capitalists, fascists, and other such oppressors will be one of the great tests of anarchist society. Great care must be taken to treat them compassionately.
I'm not even an anarchist. He is, it seems, right? Like, not that it matters. I don't know what his like full worldview is, but like, notice how he's not actually covering my position at this point. He's like completely moved on to someone entirely separate. There's a reason for that. He's doing that because he's just saying this is all the same. These are all bad opinions. And Hasan has these bad opinions. Do not look into his opinions on your own. Sex Pest, and he lost this shit on Pisco at least 10 to 15 times on a panel a couple of days ago. It was insane. All because Pisco is saying maybe Hasan isn't as bad as Trump or Hitler. Yeah. But I get why. I get why he has to be this bad faith, right? Because he's designed his entire persona around taking the opposing position to whatever I'm advocating for. So if the thing that I'm advocating for makes too much sense, then all of a sudden maybe he has to take a strong stance on something really terrible, which is precisely the reason why he has to make it seem as though I'm hiding what my actual opinion is. And one of the things that they always point to is the conversation that I had with the Deprogram boys, where he's like, Hasan hides his real opinions from the broader public. I don't. I actually am pretty straightforward with my perspective. As a matter of fact, perhaps too straightforward with my perspective. The difference, however, is that I change the way I message, even if my moral compass is still the same, depending on the audience. If I'm talking to a bunch of 75-year-olds, I'm not going to use, for example, memes that only 30-year-olds would understand or only 20-year-olds would understand. You straight up said you were a propagandist on Piers Morgan? Yes. And if you listen to the entire conversation with Piers Morgan, you would recognize that my position on that is that propaganda is a neutral term. Okay? I had a show on the Young Turks called Agitative Propaganda. Propaganda is a neutral term. What Piers Morgan is doing is propaganda. What the New York Times is doing is propaganda. Marketing is propaganda. PR is propaganda. Okay? Propaganda doesn't necessarily always have to be something evil and bad and nefarious and wrong. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're lying. As a matter of fact, what I say is I wear my positions on my sleeve. I think everyone has biases, right? Everyone has biases. And I think it's more honest to say what your biases are ahead of time rather than act as though you are actually examining something without any biases whatsoever, because you can't be devoid of bias. What is this? The underage kid they're grooming over at the Diddy G Discord, Yeet, already clipped and made a Twitter post about this discussion. I'm telling you they're freaks. Yeah, no, I know. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like I said, that will always happen. But I'm happy to see that there are people out there, even in these communities, that were incredibly brain broken, that are personally kind of seeing a way out of this cult, regardless of the endless faucet of negative commentary. When you got a fascist administration ripping through the regulatory agencies, okay, and destroying America's already limited future, while simultaneously doing kidnapping operations all around cities, ripping families apart, and you got like a supposedly liberal content creator focusing all of his enmity not towards Donald Trump, and even sometimes agreeing with Donald Trump, like when it comes to foreign policy, like when it comes to bombing Iran, or when it comes to like defending Israel's genocide, and presenting someone like myself at a time when people are desperately looking for someone to fight back. Presenting someone like myself as the true evil in America is going to make a lot of liberals turn their heads and go, I don't think you're right on this. Are you a communist? How to do highlighted message? Are you a commie or just a Bernie bro? What do you mean socialist? Is it true you don't want people to own their own company? What are you saying? Like, this is the worst time to be a centrist liberal. Exactly. And I think like a lot of people are moving away from that, and they just want the Democrats to fight back. They want our representatives to actually represent our interests, to defend our communities. So when you got a guy like myself who has been saying that, who has been vindicated because of all of the warnings that I put out there about the Kamala campaign, about not doing anything about Israel, not actually counter messaging against the devastation that would be caused by mass deportations, like all of these things, and how public attitude would shift dramatically in the opposite direction once the mass deportations were actually implemented. When you have all that stuff, when you have all of that stuff unfolding in broad daylight, and you got Deborahs and Barbaras basically saying like, Hakeem Jeffries, you have to put your body on the line. No one wants centrist, wishy-washy, middle-of-the-road commentary. You know? You just can't be neutral at a time like this. And if someone is like presenting a little bit of neutrality and simultaneously saying one of the few guys that's out there that's like actively trying to fucking get the Democrats on board with actively fighting back against the Trump administration, me, is actually a villain in your worldview, then the reality is a lot of people are going to go, I don't think that it's appropriate that you are singling out a person who has literally been fucking apprehended by Customs and Border Patrol for his criticisms of the Trump administration as the real villain here. I think the Trump administration is the real villain here. That's like, at a certain point, there's only so much fuck Hasan propaganda that you can do until people go, I think there's a much bigger villain here, dog, and you're missing the fucking forest for the trees.